Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BjjBrick Podcast. This is episode 326. Today we have an interview for you with Rich Ting. Rich is an actor. You've seen him in Cinemax's hit show Warrior. He also played a role in the movie Lone Survivor. And just coming up here, he's in the fourth season of The Man in the High Castle. That's on Amazon. That's coming out soon. And Rich has quite a deep background in martial arts ever since he was a little kid. And we have interesting conversations about growing up in the martial arts, how that's helped him in his acting career, and some things he's learned with that. We also talk about The Man in the High Castle, and I have some questions about Warrior and how that character was developed that he played in that. And it's just a fun interview, and it's just interesting to have somebody kind of different on the show that we don't have normally. So happy to bring you the interview with Rich Ting. This week, guys, I have a quote for you. It's from Robert Frost. It said, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference." And that's a very famous line. I think that are you guys familiar with this?
No. I've heard it before. How about you, Gary?
Well, I actually think he butchered the language. Two roads diverged in a wood. I think it should say two roads diverged in the woods. But I don't know who this...
How about if he changed wood to thicket? Two roads diverged in a thicket. Would that work?
Well, okay, so how the road is going to go through the thicket? Do you got to walk through the thicket? Get thorns... get scraped up, or is the thicket plowed down so that the road diverges each way?
There's a road that goes through it. I'm pretty sure it's at least partially clear.
Okay. I'm okay now.
You're okay? So yeah. What do you guys think about that? It's a famous line. It has to do with choices that you make in your life. And just the example of the two roads diverging in the wood is you're on a path, and to your left is a road. It's a well-worn path. Everybody takes this one. It probably goes towards the ice cream store or something. Who knows? And then on the right, it's not nearly as worn. It's a little bit of overgrowth happening here, and he decided to choose the one that less people were traveling on. And no matter who you are, at some point in time in your life, you're going to choose a road that is less traveled. And that is really how sometimes our lives make an interesting turn. And I think jiu-jitsu, we live in this community, and it feels like everybody's training jiu-jitsu, and we're all, but really, jiu-jitsu is a road less traveled.
I do agree with that. Jiu-jitsu is the road less traveled. Sometimes I sit there and think about, man, everybody trains jiu-jitsu, and it's just because so many of my friends train jiu-jitsu, and so many of their friends train jiu-jitsu, but there are very few people who do train jiu-jitsu. But I think you could say this about a lot of sports that aren't mainstream. Muay Thai, there's not a lot of people that train that, but to the people who train it, they probably think a lot of people MMA. But it's just past Halloween, and I've been watching a lot of AMC movie marathons, and I've been seeing a lot of Friday the 13th movies and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and movies like that. And I get a little worried that if I take that path that people aren't going, the path that's kind of not trampled over and you can barely even, looks like a game trail, that I'm going to run into some crazy guy with a chainsaw or a hatchet wearing a hockey mask. And that kind of scares me a little bit.
Sounds like a good cardio workout. Gary, you might be better off on that road less traveled.
Definitely a good cardio workout, but if I make one mistake, I'll probably never be able to go to jiu-jitsu practice again. And that's my number one thing.
I hear you. Man, Gary, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little bit of deja vu right now.
Definitely deja.
That's a Halloween thing.
Yeah, and the other thing I think about, let's take Byron's house, Joe's house, or my house. So, we're going down the street, and there's a road that goes each way. And Byron, you were talking about jiu-jitsu is a road less traveled. And then we talked about how we have all of our friends train jiu-jitsu. I think the path from our house, the road less traveled, is going to be more trampled down because we're going to jiu-jitsu practice a couple days a week, and our buddies are going same path. So I think a lot of people in our realm, in our circle of friends, are all taking the same path, and we're going to trample that path down and turn it into a super highway.
So sometimes that road to jiu-jitsu looks like it's well traveled because butt scooting tramples down the path pretty well.
No, but I mean, just if you think if you are stuck in a 8 to 5 job, you get up, you get ready for work, get your family ready for their day, go to work, come home, eat dinner, watch a little TV, rinse and repeat. Like that, I think that's very common in our society. If you want to get on a little bit of a different road, I think jiu-jitsu provides an easy road. Not an easy road, but like start jiu-jitsu. That probably, if you're starting from like that point to where you want something different, it's definitely a road less traveled. And you'll be probably the only person that trains jiu-jitsu for a little while, as far as your coworkers aren't training, or like none of your family is training. And eventually that could change because you get people that bring them in, but it's definitely a road less traveled, and it's different experiences. So if you're a little bit bored with the mundane, life is just repeating itself over and over again, try jiu-jitsu out. It's a different path.
I'd just like to add that when I've always looked at this quote, I've always considered that you've got these big fork in the roads, but also every day you make decisions. And when once you start training jiu-jitsu, not everybody's path looks the same. Don't be a wrist locker just because you're the gym. Don't, if you want to compete and the rest of the guys at the gym aren't competing, you don't have to just follow their footsteps. You can go out, find some tournaments, get yourself on the competition mat, and go your own way.
I like that, Joe. That's a great tip right there.
Yeah. Joe, not just a great tip this week, but do you have a kind of off-the-mat lesson you could bring us?
I do. We were batting it around, seeing who wanted to bring one, and, well, to be honest, none of us really had any.
Nobody raised their hand.
Any good ideas. So I said I could tell a fishing story. So for a while, I shrimp fished. And if you ever seen Forrest Gump, he had that wooden shrimp boat and those two big outriggers, and you tow your net, two nets, one off each outrigger. And so that's what we were doing. And in this particular case, the outrigger was up on the second level of the vessel, and so it was overhead. It was over the winch that I operated when we picked the nets up. And it was probably 15-foot seas that day, and you get this in the Pacific where it's really big swell, like 20 seconds apart. So the surface is glassy, and 1 minute you're up on top of a swell and you can see all the other boats around you, and the next minute you're down in the trough and you can't see anything but walls of water around you. It's really surreal. It's cool, though. Anyway, we started picking the nets up.
Yeah, it sounds kind of terrifying to be like up and down like that. Is that scary, or is that just normal business?
No, once you get used to it, I mean, those are nice days.
No wonder
you take the height of the swell and the amount of time between the peaks, and if the amount of time is greater than the height, it's nice and gentle. You can have, if you had a 20-foot swell and it was 35 seconds apart, you gently ride up one side and gently go down the other. But if it's 20 foot and it's 15 seconds apart, now you're getting slammed. So it was one of the nice days. But when the nets start coming off the bottom and that swell comes up, that's a tremendous amount of pressure. The net, the shrimp in the nets, the cables, all that stuff probably weighs 15, 20,000 pounds on each side. And, of course, it's on the end of these big, long levers. So about the time the nets started coming off the bottom, I left my winch to go pick up my range, get my gear ready. And the outrigger broke and collapsed right on top of that winch I'd been working. If I'd have still been standing there, I wouldn't be here today, man. But the other thing that it did was it transferred all the weight. Instead of being 60 or 100 feet out on each side of the boat, it transferred all that weight to one side, and the boat literally just laid over on its side when the next swell came through. Everybody's holding on to something. Captain's in the wheelhouse, both deckhands are on the deck, and so then when the swell goes down, the boat kind of rights itself a little bit, and then the next swell comes by and the boat turns back on its side. And so it does this for a few minutes, and after a few minutes, we figured, okay, we're not going to immediately. We're not going to capsize. So I reached in the galley door. My phone was inside. Picked up my phone and made 2 phone calls. I called a friend of mine that was a pastor. Said, hey, we're in some trouble out here. And then I called my wife. I said, I love you. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, I just had a minute. Wanted to call and tell you I love you. I got to go. So,
oh, man.
So those were my 2 phone calls. And then we let some cable out of the one winch that was still going to the end of the outrigger, and it kind of settled things out. We weren't in grave danger. And the guy running the boat really wanted to get the gear back. Obviously, he's responsible for the gear, and he doesn't want $20,000 worth of fishing gear. And we fought with it for a while, but every time we tried to bring more cable in and get that gear up off the bottom, it just lay the boat back over on the side. Finally, I put some pressure on him. I'm like, we got to let this stuff go. So I had to climb up to the top of the mast with a grinder in my hand and cut the cable from up there. Came down, and I'm like, damn it, there's another cable up there. I gave the grinder the other deckhand. I said, your turn now. So he climbs up there, cuts it, and got the gear loose, and got kind of straightened out a little bit. We still laid over a little, like 20-degree list, but the point is, this relates to life and to jiu-jitsu, is immediately when the boat laid over on its side, all hands on deck, trying to figure out what we're going to do to save the ship. We don't want to capsize. But after a few minutes, things settle down, and then we realize we're not sinking. We're not going to capsize immediately. That's when I took the opportunity to call my wife, and then got back to work. And then there came another point where, okay, it's time to just let this gear go, cut our losses, and we'll figure things out later. And when you think about jiu-jitsu, think about getting your guard passed or something. And there's a time when you to prevent that pass from happening. And then there also are times when, okay, now I can breathe, I can take a minute to think, and then explode again. And then there are other times, maybe you're trying for a submission, and you're trying, and there comes a point where you just got to say, I need to go to plan B because this isn't working. So it's a lot about timing and a lot about knowing what to do in the breaks.
Joe, if I could do a slow clap, I would do it. First, I want to say I'm glad everything worked out right. You had a couple crazy things there. The first one, that net would have fell on top of you if you were standing in that same spot, and you wouldn't be here today. Second part is just, when that thing tipped sideways, that was a kind of a crazy day. But I'm glad everything worked out okay, and you're here today. The most important thing.
Thanks,
but I love how you relate that to jiu-jitsu. You got to stay calm. There's going to be a point of no return. Your guard's getting passed. You need to now start setting up the next move. Get your hands in the right spot so you can escape. But yeah, that was a great story. Kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Yeah, but you kind of knew I made it through. So
I was thinking, does he live? No, but that we all, in the course of either a match or just a friendly roll, there are different things that are happening, and it kind of has a different rhythm to it. Whether it's you're kind of evenly an even situations going on, maybe you have the advantage of a position or an attempt at a submission or a positional change. Maybe you've solidified that advantage. Maybe it's going bad for you, and someone's got your back and they're flattened you out on top of you. And you're in a very bad spot. There's the one thing that's helped me. I think when I was a blue belt, or maybe a white belt, I don't remember. Somebody told me if you feel like you're getting nervous or you're overwhelmed, you always get tapped. Like that's a thing. Like there's nothing to actually be afraid of. So there's always in jiu-jitsu and not on a boat. But there's always an easy out. Like if you feel like you're being overwhelmed, there's too much going on here. I can't, I'm just in over my head. This is a terrible spot. Maybe you tap to pressure, or maybe you tap to something that you don't think is a great submission. That's fine. We want you to not get injured and to be safe. But don't have that easy out with the boat. I guess the boat would be a helicopter comes and gets you guys off the boat before it sinks or something like that. But that's not even an option.
That's still not easy.
Yeah.
Joe did not have an easy out.
No,
there was no. no easy path.
There were some decisions that need to be made to make it a better situation, and Joe helped to do that, so that was good. Yeah, good story, Joe. I don't know why you've been sitting on that one all this time.
Joe, and how scary was it to climb the mast to cut that cable? As
Man,
tipping sideways and going up and down. That must have been a tough one.
Man, you want to talk about your legs are tense and tight, and because then when you get up to the top, you got to wrap one leg. It's just a pole with rungs on either side of it. So when you get up to the top, you got to wrap one leg around and hold on that way in order to use the grinder. So yeah, pretty exhausting.
Yeah, you just skipped over that part. You didn't talk about how scary that was, but when you were talking about that thing, I was like, man, that had to take some guts to go up on that.
Yeah, you want to talk about adrenaline dump. I never really thought about it before, but man, I remember once we got things settled and we knew we were safely on our way back to the dock. Oh man, you want to talk about just feeling wiped out and exhausted.
Take a deep breath, and you made it. And if you are going to start jiu-jitsu brand new, or maybe you're within that first 6 months or a few months, we've got a book to help you kind of slow some things down, take a deep breath, and avoid some of those adrenaline dumps as well. Your first year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is an audiobook that I've made. Takes you through everything from finding the right finding the right gym for you, to your first month of training, all the way to if you want to do a tournament and what that's going to be like. It's a little over 2 hours long. It's about 2.5 hours long. It's $11.99. There'll be a link to it. Just click on, in the show notes, click on BjjBrick Store or Shop. I forget how I labeled that. Either whatever link it says on there. It says Shop, I guess. And it'll pop right up, and you could check it out through there. We've had good reviews. It's helped people get a good start to jiu-jitsu. It definitely help avoid some of the rough starts that I know I had, and Gary and Joe. Like, not everything goes perfectly smooth. We're all here today, but if you could avoid some of the frustrations of starting a new thing, this book will help you do that. So check that out, my friends.
Yep. Hey, we got a review on this book, and it basically says, hey, I started jiu-jitsu, a couple weeks ago, and when I was walking through the wood, aka thicket, there were two roads. One was well-traveled, one wasn't. I took the one less traveled, and that took me to the BjjBrick store where I bought your first year in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that has made all the difference. Great review, and for Byron's audiobook, and seems like worked out well for that person.
Also named Gary. Thank you for that. And if you have a review, send it. That would be cool. Guys, I think it is time to air our interview with Rich Ting.
He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
He is such a polite driver, he always signals when he changes lanes. This often carries over to BJJ if he has been driving a lot. If you're careful to watch his left hand before he performs a sweep, you will see his fingers flick up or down to indicate which direction he is going to sweep. Just before he executes the sweep, he will check to make sure the mat is clear of other grapplers. He can sneak up on a ninja in daytime.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BjjBrick Podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Rich Ting to the BjjBrick Podcast. Rich, I want to welcome you to the show. You're a busy guy. You have a black belt, or maybe a couple of them. You're an actor. You've been in a lot of things, from Lone Survivor, Salt, G.I. Joe. You're in the TV series Warrior, which we've talked about on the podcast before. And you're in something that's coming out, the 4th season of Man in the High Castle. So welcome to the show, Rich.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. Just give us a little introduction about your start with martial arts and how that got you to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it literally all starts with Bruce Lee. I was able to be exposed to him very young in my childhood. I believe my parents had some beta tapes of Bruce Lee and his films, and I started watching them, when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and instantly it caught my eye. Can't really recall too much of that time when I was 3 or 4 years old, but the thing I do remember is how drawn I was to this man who was not only physically, in shape and ripped out, and for that time period, especially in the 80s when I saw it, he had done this almost a decade before, so I can only imagine what that was like when he was actually filming in that kind of condition. But in any ways, I saw him when I was 3 or 4 years old, became exposed to the whole Bruce Lee world, and instantly asked my parents to enroll me in martial arts. And so at the age of 4 years old, I actually started at a Taekwondo studio in Los Angeles, and that's, the rest is kind of history.
That's you made a life-changing decision at the age of 4. That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I've always gone with my gut and my impulses, so I guess I started pretty young. But no, it was just like I said. There's only so much I can remember being that young.
Yeah.
But it was just something that, that's a true impulse. As actors, in the world today, we always, or at least I always try to keep a very open space for any impulses or anything spontaneous that comes up with my work. And ironically, I feel like as I've gotten older in life, I've tried to incorporate and kind of dive back into that kid mode, that vulnerable, that honesty, that, that very just, that child mentality where there's no filter. You know what I mean? You say what you feel, you do what you want, and you basically just play, and that's something that I've always channeled through my acting, is I just have to play more and be more vulnerable and flexible. But, when you bring up this question, I've actually never thought of it like that, in the sense where, at the age of 4, I did what I wanted to do, and that was the purest form of impulse, which was I saw Bruce Lee and I wanted to be him. So the training began.
So how was your martial arts training as a kid as you went through school? Did you stick with it, or did it kind of take the spot when other sports weren't in the highlight?
Well, it was my first athletic sport that I engaged in, obviously, at the age of 4. So to me, it's always been a foundation. It's always been a staple. And I think that's one of the main things my parents were so supportive in enrolling me in Taekwondo at a young age, just to kind of get familiar with, the biomechanics of the body, and, just to get me coordinated. I think all of us go through some awkward stages physically, mentally, emotionally as we grow up. And I think the sooner we can dial in, maybe even from a physical aspect, just the overall balance of our body and just overall coordination. I think that's really important looking back on, what my parents did for me. So, that's always been, like I said, a staple throughout my entire life. I've always trained. You're right. As I got older and different goals started kind of taking, I started prioritizing certain things. Like my first dream was to play collegiate football at the Division I college level. So I would say starting late in junior high, prior to going into high school, that kind of became the focus right there. However, I still trained in martial arts my whole time. It was always the extracurricular activity, I always say, but was able to achieve my black belt, my first 3 black belt in Taekwondo at the age of 13. And just, it's just always been a part of my life. Like, I may not train at a studio weekly like currently, but I stretch daily, and I'm always ready to go if called upon. So, I think to me it was a huge blessing in disguise, just because, not only physically, but mentally and just philosophically, martial arts is such a great asset to have in your back pocket, especially at an early age, because I think I just took for granted a lot of the things I learned in class, a lot of the intangibles that kind of carried over into my personal and academic life. So to me, it's always present, whether I'm physically training in a studio or not.
Yeah, you're clearly a hard worker, and possibly the influence of doing that Taekwondo and other martial arts early on had an influence on your drive, your ability to work hard. I think it's good for kids when they do a martial art that they get a chance to see that their hard work actually has an effect on the way things end up. And that's a great lesson to learn as a kid. You know, you can't do this kick, you can't do this form. You work hard at it, you develop it, and then you could do it. And that's the way life is. If you and you're clearly a person who works hard at a lot of different things. You have a lot of pots on the stove, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I totally. Well, first of all, thank you for that. But yeah, I completely agree with you. You know, a lot of people just think martial arts is about kicking and punching and doing the stuff you see on television and at the theaters, you know. But to me, one thing it just taught me at an early age, which of course I don't even think I realized it so much later, just because, you know, like I said, when you're a kid doing these things and listening to your instructors and going over the technical things, you're not really clear that you're learning about integrity, you're learning about accountability, you're learning about perseverance, you know, and I think those elements were ingrained in me at such a young age. It's just kind of fueled me to always finish. You know what I mean? You know, anything I start, I want to finish. And if I don't, to me, that's a failure. And I don't try to fail in life or at anything. So, like you said, you know, we go through life. There's hardships, there's ups and downs, and you know, all those different adversities we each personally have to face. But, you know, one thing that I think was at the core, because of my martial arts background, was just that whole perseverance factor, you know, meaning, like you said, if you can't do the kick today, well, if you continue to train and focus on that and stay committed to that, you will be able to do that kick. I mean, people that can't do the split, so to speak, are like, I could never, like, you know, be that flexible. Well, if you work on it enough, you can get a lot closer to that than if you didn't work on it. So my whole thing has always been, you know, just to finish, you know, whether it's finishing a test, you know, finishing, you know, your sophomore year in high school, you know, finishing a graduate degree, or even just finishing a film that starts to just go crazy during production or something weird happens. You know, I just think it's important that, you know, I always represent someone who's hardworking, who's motivated, and who's going to be accountable. You know, I think there's nothing worse than just being a person that can't be accountable and a person that can't be relied on. You know, I think that's just a combination for disaster. So I just try to hold myself to a certain standard.
Yeah. Sometimes you know, you think of these questions as far as if the 5-year-old you could see you as an adult, what would they think? And it's funny because you're talking about holding yourself to that standard. I have a feeling with the 5-year-old kid that was you would think you're awesome. Like you're living that lifestyle, you know, action figure, you know, like action martial arts in film and in TV shows. Like I don't know what that kid would be disappointed in. That's kind of a fun way to look back, because I don't know what my 5-year-old would think of me, but I'm not a movie star.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. No, that is a great point, because, you know, I don't bring that scenario up a lot, but what I do is I bring a scenario that, you know, I remember when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and, you know, in the 80s at the time, you know, and going through adversity with different peers of mine at school and on the football field and the classroom and whatnot, and then having someone to see on television like Bruce Lee, you know, ironically like Bolo Young, you know, and those kind of guys gave me this hope that maybe someday I could be like them, as cliche as that sounds, you know. Honestly, I never thought I would be doing this, but, you know, when you're a kid, you're like, oh, that would be so cool if I could do that. But, you know, more importantly to the situation, the scenario you just bring up is, you know, I would hope a 5-year-old would not only see me now, but more importantly, you know, I don't know if this is even possible, but I would rather them see the journey, you know, because to me, I feel like the journey is how I got there, obviously, but actually is the life lesson. You know what I mean? And not to go off topic, but there's just so many artists and entertainers and athletes out there that, you know, you see them in one fight on the UFC, or you see them in, you know, in one season of the NFL, or you hear one song that goes viral that they sing or whatever they do for a living, and you kind of judge them based on that image alone, you know. And then I'll give you a perfect example. This is a martial arts podcast, so I'll bring up Conor McGregor. You know, I mean, already a fan of the guy, okay, but if you ever have a chance, and those you know, your followers that are listening, you know, they watch that Netflix special, you know, I think it's called Notorious, on Conor McGregor, and you see him training at this rundown gym back in the day when he was a no-name. You see him, with his girlfriend at the time in a very, I would say, very limited spaced apartment, and you see the lifestyle, and you see the collection notices, and you see all the debt and all the negative mail he's getting just to survive. Then you fast forward to like the Floyd Mayweather experience where people are judging him like, oh, he just did it for the money and all. Here's the thing, man. Whether you're a fan of Conor or not, you watch that documentary that just captures a little bit more than what the public is aware of. You instantly respect the guy more. I mean, and if you don't, you're just a hater because you can't not respect the hard work, the continued motivation, the perseverance, that got him where he eventually needed to go. At the same time, you just hear this guy talking all this crazy stuff and doing all these crazy things. But at the end of the day, man, you've got to give it up to him. And there's a lot of guys like that, so that put in all this hard work before the cameras were even rolling, So again, yeah, it'd be super cool for a 5-year-old to see me and be like, that dude's great. That dude's dope, At the same time, I think it would be more impactful and more meaningful to me if that same 5-year-old was able to see other things prior to that led up to that, because to me, that's the lesson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's what didn't get quote unquote very Hollywood very fast, And fortunately for me, because of my background in martial arts and because of my parents, I'm not allowed to get Hollywood, is what I'm trying to say. So I stay pretty humble based on my environment and based on the people that are close to me. So, but yeah, man, like I always say, if a 5-year-old can see me on Warrior on Cinemax, I'm giving props to that 5-year-old for being able to get around his parents and watch Cinemax. So that would be cool and cool.
Yeah. But I do like how you're saying it's a journey, and you know what? You're still on that. It's not like this is the end of this. What you're doing next year hopefully will be something different, more, something next step for you. And that's really the way to look at it. It's not to think of, I'm done. You think of people who go, through school or through training or something, and they get there, you get your black belt. I'm done. I got my black belt. I'm good. No, it's just the beginning. You have a lot more to learn. You graduate from school. Okay. Are you done with your learning process, or you continue to grow as a person? Is that journey. So the act that the journey is where the value is. I like that.
Yeah, no, it really is. And, I hate to admit it, because one thing my dad told me as a young kid, I remember I graduated from like junior high school, and I was like, I remember the day, like, I came home, like, I graduated, and my dad looked at me and rolled his eyes and was like, so he's like, hey man, you're never going to stop graduating. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, there's always going to be something else to do, man. I don't know why you're so happy. He basically just kind of like, he just crushed my high that day, basically. I'll never forget it because, as much academic background that I have on paper and as much learning as I've done to the current day, I've never been a fan of school, to be honest. And so to hear that as like a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid that you're never going to be done with school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was pretty impactful, but at the same time, it's so true. I mean, I joke about it because, I get booked for these other films in which I have to learn other languages, and I end up right again with another teacher going over basic colors, numbers, foods, like a first grader again. You know what I mean? Even though I graduated from Yale, I have 2 graduate degrees, you know what I mean? And a lot more just, intangible stuff that I've gotten on the way. I'm still a student. So I think that's one thing that's really drawn me to the whole acting world too, as frustrating as it may be and as criticized as we may, as we are on a daily basis as actors, this is something I can do till literally the day I die. A lot of my friends who played in the NFL or played in professional sports arenas, they have a certain time limit that they're able to have success in. And the cool thing about this acting game, and as well as the martial arts artists are not martial artists for a day or for a year. You're a martial artist for a life. And I think that gets kind of confused with the term fighter. You got guys like Nate Diaz who are going to fight till they die, basically. You got other guys who are trying to get in and out of the game. But at the end of the day, I believe Nate Diaz is a martial artist for life. You know what I mean? And And yeah, there may come a day when he can't fight, but that doesn't mean his martial arts, the study of his martial arts and the way he conducts himself and the way he trains and just lives, that's forever.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's as stupid as saying I'm going on a diet, you know, because to me, diet is like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, me, it's a never-ending process, and I hate to say it, but my dad was right.
Yeah.
So, I'm still learning. I'm still very young. I'm still very hungry, and I still got a long ways to go.
I think the benefit of, I mean, so there's probably a few kids in that grade school or high school that are thinking, man, I can't do this. I keep learning. The benefit is once you get kind of out of that, grade school or high school stage of learning, you get to learn what you want to learn. And that's really a big lifestyle change. When did you decide to start learning and developing the craft of acting? Because it's easy to, as a 4-year-old, see Bruce Lee, I want to do that, and so you go learn martial arts, but you don't necessarily think about, you know what, I need to learn how to act as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I did plays and stuff in junior high school and elementary school, and I wouldn't say my acting began there. I would say I had the acting bug since I was a kid. You know, for me, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg thing with Bruce Lee. You know, because of Bruce, I saw him as an actor on television, but I also saw him as a martial artist. So it started my martial arts career, but then it also created the bug of potentially going into the entertainment business, right? So it's like, I don't know which one came first, to be honest. I would say, though, that my formal training actually started once I got into graduate school. And that was just due to the mere fact that I just had more time. I think a lot of people that aren't athletes in college aren't aware of the crazy time schedule and limited schedule we're on as a student athlete. You know, my 4 years at Yale playing football and literally just trying to graduate, it was a full-time job. I mean, half my day every day is gone on in and off season, as well as the summers, you know. And so those 4 years, even though they're supposed to be the best years of your life, right? Your college experience was epic kind of thing. Well, to me, it was a lot of hard work, to be honest, you know, and I didn't get a lot of freedom, and I didn't have a lot of free time, which is good because it probably kept me out of trouble. But at the same time, once I got into grad school and I decided to get my law degree and my MBA degree in a dual joint program, you know, that sounds crazy. That sounds like, oh, this guy has no life. But actually, you know, what's ironic is once I got into the dual joint program in the graduate in graduate school, I had classes in the morning and I had classes at night. And in between and after class, I had free time to do whatever I wanted to do. So actually, it hit me kind of weird once I got into grad school because I had the most time I had ever had in my life leading up to there. Because for me, high school was hectic just because I had to make sure to get to the next level. I mean, college was hectic just because it was. You know, so now I'm doing a professional dual program and I have all this free time. Like I got like 4 hours in the afternoon. I'm done after 8 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? And so to me, not only did I try to be productive as I usually try to be, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to start going to the acting theater and going to studios and start taking classes and just, you know, going in with an open mind and more as a hobby kind of thing. And that's when it really started, when I was in grad school. And slowly it just kind of started intensifying and I started falling more and more in love with it. And then opportunities slowly started coming up.
Yeah, you allowed yourself the ability to explore something that was interesting to you when you had that free time.
Totally, and it goes back to what you said earlier. You know, I'm a very strong believer in like you learn what you love. You know what I mean? Be able to do what you love, then that's never work. You know, like I hate to say it, but to this day, what is it? Calculus, right? Or AP calculus, or AP biology. Like that hasn't really helped me, to be honest. You know what I mean? And those are like those prerequisites, those fundamental core things that you got to get through in order to get to a level where you're like, you know what? I want to focus on this now. And I think that's really when, you know, my life really started. I started seeing why I had to go through all the different levels prior to what I was eventually going to do. You know, it's like it's like anything else. Like my life is like, you know, like a curriculum, right? the first 20 years, you got to do all these basic requirements. You know, the next 20 years, you can kind of focus on what you want, and hopefully the other 20 years after that, you're succeeding in whatever you're doing, you know? So, but I totally believe in that. Like, you know, you definitely learn what you love.
Yeah. I mean, talking about those 20-year chunks, journey, yet again, it's a journey that you're building on. And I do like how you have the outlook of you can do this as long as you want to. You could be. There's no real age limit for actors. I mean,
no,
there's different roles that need to be filled, and you'll be able to fill one of those as you get older.
Exactly. That's, well, hopefully, knock on wood, right? Hopefully.
So tell me a little bit about
we're all gonna get replaced by robots, and then there's gonna be no more industry for actors. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how things play out. But tell me a little bit about The Man in the High Castle. It's kind of if somebody's not familiar with that, kind of like an alternate world of World War II if it ended differently. Is that right?
Yeah. So basically, the premise of the show, The Man in the High Castle, is set on the notion of what if the U.S. lost World War II. So, you know, in short, quickly what would have happened is Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan would have took over the world. And that's basically the foundational premise of the show, in which Imperial Japan rules, if you can picture it on a globe. They obviously rule everything in Asia from top to bottom, northern and southern hemispheres. So you're talking from literally mainland China, Russia, all the way down to even like Australia, okay? And their influence transcended over the Pacific Ocean to the Pacific states, to the west coast of the U.S., while Nazi Germany worked its way from Europe all the way northern and southern hemispheres, all the way down to the tip of Africa, westward to the east coast of the United States. So basically, you have these two governments that they're obviously on the same side, but they have their own issues internally. But their main focus actually is to suppress the quote-unquote resistance forces that are basically all the Americans and defectors and people that don't believe in the whole communist regime that exists in the U.S. And what's happened is those people called the resistance have been kind of sandwiched into the middle of America, since you have the Japanese influence on the West Coast creeping inward and the Nazi Germany influence on the East Coast creeping westward. And it just, I believe the first season, it was more of a historical drama. However, there was a sci-fi element that was introduced in which, already the premise is based on an alternative world, so to speak. But now, once you get into this world, there's time travel and there's other things that happen that you can get sent through to other alternative worlds within the alternative world. So what I always say is if you're a fan of the show, you've been watching season 1 since day one, because it's not an easy watch. It's extremely intense. It's extremely detailed. And it's one of those shows where you miss part of an episode, it's going to throw you off, And so, basically, it's Amazon's first ever Emmy Award winning show. It's won a ton of awards. I've been a fan of the show since its first season. And, a lot of crazy things happened between seasons 1 and 3. And so to come on it as a new character on the whole season 4, which is the finale season, was a little surreal, because it's actually the first time I've ever been a fan of a show in which I later was cast and was able to work on that show. So for me, literally, I'm a fan that's been watching it, and all of a sudden I'm there in it on that set with those main characters. So for me, it was the first time that this situation has come up. So it was great.
Can you tell us about your character?
Yeah, so I play Captain Ijima on the 4th season of The Man in the High Castle. And basically what's happened over the course of 3 seasons on the show prior to my arrival is that there's one main chief inspector of the Japanese Kempetai. Basically what the Japanese Kempetai is, it's like the Japanese FBI Secret Service that they have ruling the Western Pacific states. So command is coming from Japan, but then there's like their own little branch of police called the Kempetai that govern and make sure everything's, is everything is obeyed accordingly to what's going on with the Emperor in Japan. That character from season 1 is Chief Inspector Takeshi Kido. And throughout the first 3 seasons, he's always had kind of a right-hand man agent. So it would be him and this agent that would kind of carry out the rules and regulations of the Kempeitai government. And ironically, each season, Kido's guy ends up dying somehow. He either gets, murdered or blown up or something, but every year they seem to introduce a new kind of lead agent for the Kempeitai. So, of course, season 4 opens and Captain Ijima comes over, whose character I play. And I think the cool thing about this time is that, fans of this show will automatically be like, oh, he must be the replacement for the ex-agent that died in season 3. And the answer is yes and no. I've been sent over from the Japanese Emperor to provide aid and assistance to Chief Inspector Kido. However, unlike former characters that have filled this position, I have been given other instructions and orders, and there's an alternative motive of why I show up. And I think, and I can't give that away it's a spoiler, obviously, but
Yeah.
I think the cool thing about what Captain Ijima is about is that you don't really know what side he's on. You get a vibe he's been sent over to help, but you also get a vibe he's been sent over to watch and observe. And so there's this little bit of a power struggle between Chief Inspector Kido and Captain Ijima. And obviously, there's an element of trust comes up. So I think for the viewer, it's going to be really exciting because it's just, my character is one of the new elements that shows up in season 4. There's a big tragedy that has happened in between season 3 and season 4, which the viewers come to find out immediately in the first few minutes of episode 1 of season 4. And it just kind of takes you on a roller coaster after that.
Wow. that sounds amazing. When does this come out?
Yeah, so it is scheduled to be available on Amazon Prime on November 15th. So I believe we're looking at Friday, November 15th.
Okay. And this interview is going to air on November 11th, so just in a few days it'll be out for viewing. And I'm looking forward to that, seeing you in playing that role. Thinking back to all of the different spots you've had in your acting career, can you think of one that maybe you had more freedom to incorporate some of your own ideas as far as how a fight scene went or how a character was played?
Yeah, totally. Without a doubt, Warrior.
Yeah.
And I think, again, this is more from the actor's point of view, is that, I believe the public, that isn't just aware of the things that we go through, in preparation, in being directed, having writers, producers around us all the time, and a lot of that can sometimes limit our flexibility within a character. Honestly, being able to meet, work with, create a huge bond with, Shannon Lee, the daughter of Bruce Lee, number one, was unreal. To be able to shake the hand and communicate with, Bruce Lee's blood, that was insane to me. And then on top of it, she's one of the nicest, most generous human beings I've ever met. Working with people like Justin Lin, and all his work on the Fast and Furious series and Star Trek and everything else he's done, and Jonathan Tropper and Danielle Woodrow as well. It's one thing to see all these people on paper and to be to be pretty geeked out of your mind that you're going to be working for them. But then once you meet them and, it was an all-star dream team is what I say. The first thing they told me is, you're playing Bolo. And I, smiled and said, yes, I know. And then they said, but we don't want you to be Bolo. So from the very beginning, my very first meeting at HBO with everyone, they emphasized the fact that, this is based on Bruce Lee's writing. This is based on Bruce Lee. This is also based on real people like Bolo Young, who Bruce would have had in the show had it been greenlit back in the 70s. Bolo Young is a notorious, iconic figure, that I've grown up watching and loving and everything he's done. And so already I started laughing because I said, even if you're not trying to be Bruce Lee, people that grew up watching Bruce Lee, it's in you. It becomes part of your stance. It becomes part of your sound. It becomes part of your breathing. It becomes part of the way you look to your left and to your right. You know what I mean? And so to say that we don't want you to be Bolo, I started laughing. I was like, but I am Bolo. You know what I mean? Because I had watched this guy so many years in Bloodsport and Enter the Dragon and Double Impact and all these other things he did. And I was like, this dude is sick. You know what I mean? I love this guy. So what they meant, which was so fantastic, and I bring it up because of what you just asked, is they gave me the liberty. They said, look, we want you to do this part and to play this character because of you, Rich, the actor, and what you have to bring. Now, if you want to tribute the man in any way possible, you have every freedom to do that. But please don't feel that you have to imitate or try to replicate the real Bolo Young. And I was like, done. That for an artist, for an actor to be given that speech on the first day of pre-production, it doesn't get any better than that. So with that mentality going into it, we then get into the next level where I start having meetings with the stunt coordinator, Brett Chan, about the style of what Bolo in Warrior is going to be. And even that conversation was extremely open and generous because, obviously Brett wanted me to feel comfortable and wanted to see what my ideas were. And we both agreed on basing the character off the Hungar Kung Fu style, which we said is Bolo, which, philosophy, it's basically philosophy is, minimum movement with maximum output, or minimum movement with maximum damage, and that's Bolo in Warrior. He's not going to do something unless it's meaningful. He's not, going to faint or do something else like that. He's just going to knock you out or he's going to break you. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what we decided on, and that's what we went with, and I don't know if you're able to watch Warrior, but, fans of the show know that Bolo in episode 4 has a flashback about what I used to be called, which was the Yellow Demon. And I slammed this railroad spike into the table at the beginning of the episode. That railroad spike is a contextual thing based on my past of moving to America to work on the railroads like a lot of other Chinese did back in the day. However, because of my physicality and because of just me, of Bolo, the railroad owners and company owners used to run an underground railroad, like Kumite fighting circuit. And they realized they could make more money off of me as a fighter than me building a railroad for them. So with that, that was a huge deal from the producers and directors standpoint because it was the first time you get to learn about Bolo's past in episode 4. So building up to that scene, I remember, in the first episode, I was talking to Jonathan Tropper, our showrunner and writer, and I told him, I said, you know what? I'm not going to play this Bolo character like a tough guy. I'm not just going to stand next to, my boss and be a tough guy, whatever that means. I'm going to give Bolo, the way I'm going to attribute Bolo Young is by creating a real person. And I say that because it was important to me that, Bolo, the real Bolo Young had made a career for himself based on limited dialogue and maximum action. And at the end of the day, he was almost like a robot to us. Where Chung Lee walks into the ring and he's going to kill you. He's a robot. He's a deadly robot. Okay? So I said, you know what? I'm going to bring in the humanity side and make this guy a full person. And in doing so, I need things that I need to occupy myself with in a scene. For example, knowing that my backstory was that I worked on the railroads and I fought in this underground railroad Kumite circuit.
Yeah.
I presented to Jonathan Tropper the idea that, you know what? Bolo has a railroad spike on him all the time. It's something that reminds him of his past. It's a memorabilia kind of thing. It's also something that he can use as a weapon, And I said, what do you think about that? I literally pulled him aside one day when we were shooting episode 1. And I said, what do you think about that? He's like, I think that's fantastic. Okay, that's phenomenal right there. That a showrunner and a writer, number one, gives their actors that much freedom to even have a conversation like that. Okay, number two is, this is where Hollywood is awesome. Is within the next day or two, he had the props guy and our creative set director people come together and present me with, I think, about 10 different, like, authentic railroad spikes made of iron. And they're like, which one do you like? And I said, you know what? I like this one. They're like, great, we'll go with that one. And then I told Jonathan Tropper, I was like, you know what? This isn't something that anyone has to know about. I said, besides you, me, and the art department, the prop department, no one else is going to know. I'm just going to have this on me. And so what happens is I have it on me, and it's one of those things where, I'm curious who can spot it, because I have it in multiple scenes, but you don't know I have it unless you're really looking for it, right?
Okay.
But I have it on camera, and I'm using it. It's in my hand. And then all of a sudden, we had gotten the scripts for the future episodes ahead of time. And then when we got around to filming episode 3 and the final draft of episode 4 coming out, I remember the first day I read the new version, and Jonathan incorporated not only the railroad spike, but dialogue and a story behind it that was never there in the original scripts. And so to me, that was just awesome, because a lot of these things, a lot of our quote unquote secrets or actor secrets that we do or have while we're filming, that those are very private, and you'll hear things all the time like, oh, so-and-so had this in his pocket the whole time he shot this thing, and it really allowed him to channel that energy or whatever it was. But to not only come up with something, present it to our showrunner, have him manifest it within a few days, and then insert it into the script for the world to see, like that doesn't happen a lot, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And that railroad spike became a staple in the show, which is so crazy because it's just something that I wanted to hold in my hand, in my pocket. And, and that's how the idea started.
That's pretty wild. And so from there, how, clearly a railroad spike can be used as a weapon, but were any, do you have any martial arts training with weapons, or are you familiar with that sort of thing?
Yeah, I've ventured off definitely through the weapons, and again, it's a whole Bruce Lee influence, based on the new drugs and the bow staff and the Filipino scrivener sticks and all that, and knives and whatnot. So to me, using a railroad spike was very similar to using a hand knife,
okay,
or something of that nature. What was new and what also was incorporated was that back in the day, these Chinatown tongs, back in the 1800s, their choice of weapon, or their common weapon, was the hatchet. A lot of them are referred to as hatchet men, and that's basically just like a small axe you can holster under your arm, underneath the jacket. So my point to this is that I had never used a hatchet, but it was very similar to using other weapons I had used. It wasn't as long as a Filipino scrivener stick, but it wasn't as short as a hand knife. So I felt pretty comfortable with it, but, more importantly, they wanted to give Bolo a specialized hatchet, because he's the top lieutenant in the Hopway Tong, so he needs something to separate himself besides, obviously, his physicality. And that was to customize me with my own personalized hatchet, and this hatchet was measured to my hand. There was a ring for my index finger, almost like a gun, so I could grip it better. And on the back, so you have the hatchet blade on one end, which is your axe blade, but on the back of that axe blade, they made it more of a wider, I'd say, butt, in the sense that I could use that as a hammer if I flipped it around, or another kind of weapon that with that kind of impact.
Kind of a bashing instead of cutting,
at the bottom of the hatchet, at the bottom of the handle, they ended up putting a quote unquote similar kind of railroad spike on the bottom. So I could slice with the axe, I can hammer with the back of it, and then I can actually stab with the bottom of it. and then the whole grip thing was very customized to my own hand and my own shape and form. So that was kind of the weapon that I used throughout the show, which incorporated not only the railroad spike concept, but just also incorporated just so many different weapons that I've trained with in the past to come together in one. So in that sense, it was kind of meant to be.
Yeah. There's so much more value in a character that has depth. And the fact, I'm not a movie guy. I don't make movies. I'm not a good director, but like the fact that you helped bring some depth to a character like that, as an actor, it seems like a tremendous asset to have you on the set and have you just throw out, an idea or two here or there, and just see if it sticks or not, and adding tremendous value to the overall finished product with just a little bit of input.
No, I totally, and that's the thing. I think through my own experiences, you have to always over-prepare for certain things, like a character in which you're giving the audience a fraction of that character's life. You meet them at the age of 30, let's say, but what happened before? Then you leave them at the age of 31 because the film only takes place, or it only takes place over a certain amount of time. So how do you give the audience and the viewers a true feel and vibe of this character by giving them a small fraction of who they really are in their own character life, let's say, and I think with me, I always prepare backstory. I always prepare future story, because those fuel me on the day when we're filming, when something comes up, because it always comes up and it's not written in the script, and something comes up, whether it's a reaction to something, whether it's an impulse to actually do something, to initiate something, whatever it may be. And that's where those magical little moments come in. And those moments are fueled and prepared based on all the prep work from putting in for a historical point of view, like for a backstory or for a future story. You know what I mean? Because if you come in empty on those, it's not going to be good, to say the least. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think just having done so much research on the Chinese railroad workers, knowing this is the period of warrior taking place. So while these Chinese guys are working on the railroads, there's also Chinese guys in San Francisco creating gangs and tongs and running this opium business. But there's also Chinese people doing this and this. So it's like I had to insert myself in this world. And then I was like, hey, this one day I got an impulse. I was like, that would be kind of cool if I could carry a railroad spike or something like that from my past, because that's something Bolo would do. And I just feel like had I not researched certain things, maybe I would have never gotten that impulse and it would have never made it, But I think that's, I still don't believe what I do sometimes. I get paid to play characters on film and I get paid for it. You know what I mean? The least I can do is research and fully develop that character prior to me filming. That's the very least I can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and so again, it's like, I only bring this up because of the type of podcast this is, but it's like, Nate Diaz just fought. I'm a Nate Diaz fan, Nate Diaz Army all day. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I have to respect the guy. The guy, before his last fight against Pettis, he literally was like, I don't know what a fight camp is. Because I've never had a fight camp. People are like, oh, I had an 8-week fight camp, or I had a 12-week fight camp. He's like, my fight camp has basically been my whole life. So if a fight comes up, I'm ready to go, a.k.a. the Conor McGregor fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to me, that's the least I can do. See, it sucks because, that's where I have even more respect for these UFC guys and these MMA fighters because they're training every day getting beat up, okay? I may take some hits here and there, but we're playing fake beat up. Okay, on camera. Like, yeah, it's physical, but I may get hit once in a while, but I'm not getting hit every time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, when I get booked for a show, for a film, for a TV thing, whatever it is, the least I can do is prepare a character fully and give this person a full life. Because at the end of the day, yeah, you may only see 20% of that character, but hopefully that 20% is legit because of the 100% that I put into it on the front end. You know what I mean?
And that's, I've never really thought of it that way, but you want to develop the possibility for a deep character, somebody who the audience has interest in. What's up with this guy? Why does he have a road spike? Like just switch the whole thing out for a knife. If he had a knife in his hand, nobody would care about that at all. But having some creativity and some depth to that, that's really cool. Talking about developing character or trying to learn about a character, that you're helping to create. How about playing a role in Lone Survivor? What was that like?
Oh man, that was epic as well. Yeah, God, where do I start with that? One, it's always a huge privilege and honor to be cast for a not only a true person, a true living person, but to be asked to play, a Navy SEAL that lost his life, in the Middle East, for fighting for our freedom. You know what I mean? Like that, it's so heavy that I don't talk about it a lot, obviously. At the same time, a huge honor. And then, that, I mean, like I said, where do I start? I mean, I could talk about the prep work for that. Like how do you prep to play a real guy that gave his life for our country and for the fact that I can wake up and not, and do what I do every day. You know what I'm saying? So you can never honor that person enough. I don't care how much you prep. You know what I mean? Because that person is no longer here. You know what I'm saying? So there's that element, which was extremely deep for me. There's also the element of working with Peter Berg, the director, and Mark Wahlberg and Eric Bana and Taylor Kitsch and Ben Foster. I mean, yeah, that's a whole other element where you're going to be, one of the dudes in this all A-lister cast, and you're going to be shooting for like 8 weeks with these guys. I'm like, okay, this is going to be pretty epic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you get to set, and what Peter Berg did was all the extras on set were all true military men and women. So that brought a whole nother element, because now you weren't an actor on a set with other actors. Okay, you were an actor on a real life base camp.
Oh man,
with people looking at you that have done missions, that have served serious time over in the Middle East. Okay. Now they're looking at you and basically, I mean, maybe it was me just being sensitive, but, I'm an actor, okay? I'm not military. I have tremendous respect for our military. Now I'm on a set getting paid to be one of those honored military men while being watched by hundreds of real military active and non-active extras. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was crazy because it's the most humbling experience. And even if you weren't humble and you're arrogant, like you were humbled in a second, because, I just heard so many amazing stories about not only the real characters while on set from their friends, because obviously their friends were Peter Berg did an excellent job with Mark, and in making sure they incorporated the right people, so there's a lot of friends and close, I don't even know what you would call them, like teammates, I guess, of the Navy SEALs that did lose their lives, in the real Lone Survivor incident. And so just to be around those kind of guys and to see what they've gone through, and it was very emotional, to say the least, and extremely humbling. Yeah, I just don't know what else I could say about that.
Yeah, there's just such a contrast from working as a Bolo and trying to create something to trying to get an actual person who has made such an impact on the world that we have today, and to portray that the best you can, and then to have people watching you, from military backgrounds, and was that? I imagine at first that was stressful, but did that ever turn a corner to where you felt like they were supportive, or like you were happy that they were there watching you, or was it always was it kind of like, man, I got to do this right, I'm going to make these guys upset with me?
Yeah, no, they were all so supportive, and so supportive that there's already pressure I put on myself every time I work, right? There's pressure because it takes a village, man. Like, it's just not me doing this alone. I have a lot of people that are on the team that help me do what I do, and when we get our opportunity, I need to rise to the occasion. So already, because of the magnitude of the cast and the director and the script and the writers and producers, I was already like, okay, I gotta perform like I always do, and I treat everything the same. But then you get on set and you interact with these, real heroes, the real heroes. It just added that much more pressure. You know what I mean? Because now there's no excuse. I'm able to do what I do for a living because of these men and women who fight for us every day and who come back and are so supportive at the same time, And so, to me, it was motivating. It was just, man. Like, I usually have an answer for everything, and to be honest, it was just all I can say was it was just such a great experience because, on one end, like you said, in Warrior, I get to honor Bolo Young, but that's a celebration for his legacy on camera, so to speak, right? And that's, and people are like, oh yeah, it's Bolo from Enter the Dragon, or it's Chung-Li from Bloodsport. That's dope, And that's great. But it's just a little different when I'm representing someone who's died for us, who served for us, and the project is in honor of him as well as some other people. You know what I mean? And we're not just showing a glimpse of them, but we're trying to honor their entire life in 2 hours on film. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
And then with all the editing and stuff, the story gets twists and turns. So, it becomes a movie for people to watch, and so, that's why I get it, man. I know a lot of families were supportive of that film, and I know a lot of families weren't. And I completely understand both sides. You know what I mean? Because it's one of those things where you want to honor people, and the intention is 100% genuine and positive, but people just take it different ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All I can do is just do what I do to the best of my ability, and I walked away feeling that no matter how much screen time this character ended up getting or not, I honored this man, and I'm so thankful for that opportunity, and it's something I'll never forget. Definitely.
Wow. That's an awesome way to look at it, and feeling like it's an honor to play that, and to do your absolute best in the time that you have, before you show up on screen, while you're on screen, and now even talking about it, you're still honoring him and what he did. Rich, we could keep going down the list and talking about different things you've done, but we don't have all day to do this. Where can somebody kind of keep up with you and follow you, what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm. Well, first of all, thank you for this time, man. It's great questions. Appreciate it, definitely. People can always follow me. I have the same social media name on all platforms. It's Rich Ting World. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can look me up at richtingworld.com. But everything is Rich Ting World.
All right. I'll put links to those in the show notes. Any final thoughts or words you want to leave with the audience?
No, just thank you for the time, and it's been fun reminiscing about Lone Survivor and Warrior, and hope everyone tunes in November 15th on Amazon Prime to catch the 4th season of The Man in the High Castle. Yep,
this releasing a little bit beforehand. Guys, you have time to binge watch the first 3 seasons to get ready for the season finale of the 4th season. So thank you so much for being on here with me. I appreciate it. It was fun.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Well, I want to thank Rich for hopping on here and doing the interview. It's fun for me as an interviewer to get to talk to somebody who is so much different than who I usually talk to. Is somebody who's got an entirely different career, and Rich is definitely that. So it kind of makes me stretch my interviewing muscles and do something that's a little out of my normal skill set. And that's good for me, and it's fun. And I know you guys could tell I was having a great time talking to Rich and getting to know him. A really down-to-earth guy, very friendly. off the air as well. And look forward to watching that. Check it out, The Man in the High Castle. The fourth season airs on Amazon Prime, so check that out, my friends. If you thought this was an interview that a friend of yours would enjoy, let them know. Share the podcast with them. Word of mouth is really the best way that we've been able to grow this podcast within the jiu-jitsu community. And you have grappling friends, and if you think they're going to enjoy the podcast, send them a link or just tell them about it, and they can go find it. It's easy to find on BjjBrick.com or wherever you find podcasts. Search for BJJ and we'll pop up pretty good.
Yep. Hey, Joe, now that Byron stopped talking, me and you need to talk. I don't know how many of you guys realize this, but, Byron is the owner of this company, and Joe and I, we are workers. We're not unionized or anything, and the end of the year is coming up. And normally what happens at the end of the year is Byron sits down with Joe and I and gives us our performance review, how we did this last year. And,
coming up.
Yep, coming up. And Joe, I know me and you have been talking on the side, but, we really need to do some negotiating with Byron. We need to negotiate our salary. I don't know. I know we've been talking about it, but, how can we get better at negotiating our salary? I mean, or is there an article or something we could use, maybe to learn about negotiating our salary?
That would be helpful. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of making peanut wages here at the BjjBrick, and the benefits.
Do you make that, Joe?
And the benefits ain't worth a dang.
Yeah, a few years ago, I was talking to my wife, and she's like, "Hey, you need to go out and get a job and support this family." So she's like, "Get out right now and start looking for work." So I started walking down the road, and I got to the wood, and the road diverged into two paths, and one, was taking me to all the big companies, Amazon and Google and everything, and the other took me to BjjBrick, and look where I'm at now.
Definitely less traveled.
Yeah, that Amazon offer where they were going to give you 15% of the company, that was
a big mistake. Not looking back at it.
More money, more problems, Gary.
Well, see, that's what you're going to say in our performance review.
Okay.
So if we wanted some advice, we could go over Masterson Staffing Solutions. They've got a website, and they've got an article on here.
I think it's Masters. Oh, it is. Okay. I thought it was Masters on Staffing Solutions.com.
Hey, though, you guys keep making fun of the first name, and I'm just laughing because you guys said staff.
Staffing Solutions.
Yeah, it is Masterson.
Okay. Let's try this again. Let's go over to Masterson Staffing Solutions for an article, How to Negotiate Your Salary and Benefits. 5 tips that will get the job done. And, to decide who's going to go first this morning, we're going to play rock, paper, scissors. Oh, man, I threw down paper, and Gary and Byron both threw down a rock, so paper covers rock. I'll go first. Who's going second? We're going to wrestle a match between Gary and Byron. 1, 2, 3, go. Damn it, Byron. You got to at least put up a little bit of a fight next time. So Gary, you're second.
Okay.
Wait.
So anyway, this is a good article. If you are negotiating a salary, if you're looking for a job, you might want to check it out. It's got some good information. But we can drag this back onto the mat. And the first point is know your market and your employer. And if you're going and you're looking for the job, if you're interviewing for the job, or if you already have the job and you're looking for a raise, the more you know about the market that you're in and the more you know about your employer, the better it's going to be. And I like one point that he makes. He says, look at their social media, look at their website where they're advertising that they're looking for help, and what's important to them will be on that. So if they don't have anything on there about we're proud to be one of the top payers in the industry, they're probably not one of the top paying companies in the industry. If they don't have anything on there about we offer great benefit packages and vacations, that's probably not really important to them. There may be other things that they do offer, but it's probably not those things. And when you go looking for a gym, do the same thing. If you want to be a competitor and you see a gym, you their social media, their Facebook, their webpage, and there are zero pictures of guys at competitions. There's zero mention of competition results or competition team, then that's probably not what that gym focuses on. So, do some looking, do some digging, and you can find the right gym. Gary, go.
I'm going to take point number 2, make salary and benefits part of the conversation. When I'm going to talk to Byron about my position, I need to ask about salary. I need to ask about benefits. It's very important. But, dragging this onto the mat, salary and benefits are basically the good part of it for me. So what I'm talking about on jiu-jitsu is I can talk to the coach. Hey, don't be afraid to ask coach questions. I need to get better at so-and-so part of my game. Don't be afraid to talk. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Take the coach aside and tell him what you're trying to get better at. And, the benefit of me talking to the coach, me working with the coach, I am now going to be better at my half guard or whatever I'm working, whatever part of my game I'm working. Don't be afraid of the manager / coach. Ask questions and reap the rewards.
Well, I guess I'm up. By process of by losing 2 events in a row. I like the third one here. Be specific with your requirements. So, and of course, this is all good information if you're trying to negotiate your salary, like these 2 guys are today. What do you want? What would make you happy? It may not just be about money. It may not be just about, your schedule. There might be some factors that you can work in here. What are your goals? So if you are shopping for a jiu-jitsu gym, maybe you just moved, maybe you're just on the market for a gym or just changing things up. Talk to the coaches and see, hey, my goal over the next few years is to get in here and I want to lose some weight, or I want to start competing at, a brown belt level, or, tell them what you want, or what you are hoping to do with your jiu-jitsu, and then see how they react to that. Because it's just human nature. A lot of people are just bad listeners. So you might come in and
you might say something.
Yeah, you might come in and maybe you're 40 pounds overweight, and you're like, really, my main thing is I want to lose some weight. And the person kind of giving you the tour or showing you around, or maybe interacting with you the first couple times on the mat, is really just pushing how great the competition team is, or how great, the no-gi aspect of everything is. It's like, I've told you 3 times that I'm interested in losing weight, and it's almost like you didn't hear that. So make sure you're a coach, or you're the person that is trying to, make the gym look good, knows what you're looking for, and see if that gym is able to provide that. Because, maybe that same gym has a fitness program, but if the whole time they're just bragging about how great they did the last tournament, and they didn't even mention the fitness program that's right before jiu-jitsu class, you can get in there, get sweaty right before anybody even trains with you. That way you're like Gary, by the time you show up, Gary's already nice and moist for everybody. I don't know. That's probably not true, is it, Gary?
Yes, it is.
You
true.
want to roll Gary first. No, Gary works really hard. Anyway, just be clear with what you want, and hopefully their communication skills are on par with being able to address that. We've all seen situations where you've expressed something and that basically gets ignored, and they talk about what they're passionate about. That's unfortunate from a sales point of view from the gym, but also, you may have to do a little bit more digging as far as what does this gym really have to offer. But at least tell them your goals, tell them what you want to do with your jiu-jitsu.
All right, number 4. I guess we'll just roll right through them. They're all pretty quick and easy. It says work with a recruiter. Yeah. Quick and easy. You know what I like? I like cheap and easy. Anyway, work with a recruiter to be your advocate. And so this is applicable, obviously, when you're looking for a job. I think that's what they're referring to here. But you might also look for someone else to advocate for you at any point in the process. Maybe you're just not a great negotiator and you need a little help. So speaking of which, Byron, I've enlisted the help negotiating team. Danaher Death Squad will be in Wichita to negotiate my salary next week. So be looking for that.
Okay.
Man,
So
Joe,
Byron had an interesting point before we started this conversation about point number 4, and that is that we live in a day and age now where it's easy to communicate with people, to meet new people. So if you're moving from, say, Portland, Oregon to Wichita, Kansas, you've got some resources there. You can call Gary and Byron up or hit them up on Facebook or send them an email and say, hey, I'm moving to town. What are some good gyms to train at? And they can point you in the right direction. So I thought that.
Yeah.
I also think there might go ahead, Byron.
No, I like just with that. You could also just type in Portland Jiu-Jitsu in podcast, and we've got 300 some podcasts, but there's a lot more podcasts out there, and maybe you could hear the different coaches be interviewed or their input, and maybe get a little bit of a peek about what their jiu-jitsu is about. From
I like it
from that perspective.
Absolutely. Now that you mention it, when I have Googled individuals before, a lot of times one of the first things that will come up on my search will be them being interviewed on a podcast. So that is a great way to get about them. Good, Byron. I like that.
Number 5. All you guys remember, salary isn't everything. And I'm just going to go right to the very last sentence. It's about finding the right role, team, and company to be part of. And we've kind of talked a little bit about this all around. We want to do some research. Our jiu-jitsu journey is going to be much more enjoyable and effective if we find the right team to be part of. Do your research, get a recruiter, be specific in your requirements. Don't be afraid to, have benefits as part of the conversation. Know your market, know the different gyms in the area. And, I think it was Byron, you were saying, I may not be a competitor. I may be an old guy like me just looking to learn jiu-jitsu, and, the school could be ultra competitive, which may not work for me. Could be the vice versa. Could be I want to learn self-defense, and, it's a sport jiu-jitsu school, geared that way. So, do all that stuff up and find the right team, company, jiu-jitsu gym to be part of, and everything else will be awesome.
Yeah, this has been fun. This kind of extension of our so every week, if you're new to the podcast, we have an article, usually about jiu-jitsu. We talk about it, and over the past month or so, we've had non-jiu-jitsu articles and just brought them onto the mat and pinned them down and tried to get a submission out of them. And this has been good. Last week we had one about, was it bull riding, I believe? And it's just kind of a variety of things that, there's a lot of commonalities between how to do something correctly through whatever. And, salary isn't everything, Gary. And so you might be, I looked at this, I thought, well, maybe you're looking at 2 different gyms. Maybe one of them is $10 or $20 more expensive a month. Well, is that the only factor? Maybe that same gym is, 10 minutes closer to your house, or maybe 10 minutes closer to your work. Or maybe they offer classes in the morning or a later class where you won't miss the first 30 minutes after work or something like that. There's a lot of other factors that have to kind of factor in. Maybe they have, an instructor that you really clicked with very well. There's a lot other than just I'm going to go to the cheapest gym, or I'm going to go to the one that is, lets me just pay 1 month at a time, or has, free open, whatever it is. There's a lot of different factors that you need to kind of account for, and sometimes choosing the road less traveled is the correct one. But if you're going to negotiate your salary, definitely check out an article like this one. There'll be a link to in the show notes.
Hey, Byron.
Yeah.
What do you got going? I know you got an interview on Monday. Are you free at 5 o'clock on Monday?
No, interview's at 6, I think.
Okay, so you're okay. It's only going to take a couple minutes at 5. But, I know while you guys were talking, I've been sending out emails. So I have Paul Harris coming to talk to you at 5 o'clock to basically negotiate my salary.
Does he talk?
So I hope you're okay.
Well, Gary,
I don't know if he's going to be doing any talking, but I can tell you, you are not going to be in a good spot.
I may not be home. Okay, Gary. Yeah. I don't know for sure where it's going to be, wherever to be. Some things have come up. Gary's trying to negotiate with me weekly. That's the thing about Gary. And just like my game.
Very weekly.
Very. Hey, it's just as long as you keep trying, right?
Yes. Yep.
You try to get a 1% raise off of a 0 raise, off of making nothing. And,
I mean, the thing is, you got me last year, and that's why I'm bringing in Paul Harris. Last year you said you were going to double my salary, and then I told my first grader, and my first grader said, "Dad, he's doubling 0, so you still get 0." And I guess a first grader is smarter than me.
Yeah, Gary. Okay, I apologize for misleading you, and just to make everything all better, I'm going to triple it this year.
Yes. Joe, did you hear that?
Yep, you're going to get twice as many days off.
Oh, man. So we are at a bit of a shoestring budget. Actually, doesn't really matter, but I got a bill for $400 for the podcast. I'm like, what is this? So I called them and like, what services did you guys just provide me out of the blue and not give me a receipt for? And they agree. I didn't get a receipt. I didn't ask for this charge. And it's all part of we're technically an LLC, and they were like, this is what we're doing. And I'm like, well, how come we haven't done this any time? We've been at LLC for the whole time. I don't know if it's been 7 years or whatever, and I've never been charged this ever. And
but do you have a contract with?
No, I don't know. I haven't got an email from them for 2 years. I searched my inbox and I couldn't find anything, let alone a receipt or like an invoice. From
so what is it for?
It was for basically you need to have, in the state of Kansas, you need to have an attorney's office that represents you in the state, and they're charging $400 for that. I found somebody who will do it for a lot less. And so they're going to credit me back the money, but it's like, this, I don't know. It's just like kind of funny.
Money, they already took it from you?
They charged. Yeah, they took it, and they'll give it.
They got your account number?
Yeah, from when I initially signed up and got an LLC.
Okay,
but that was a while ago. I was shocked that all this went through, and maybe I've used one of their services in between that time, but I couldn't find anything since 2017, and I was like, this is a lot of money for a podcast that's on a shoestring budget. And so we're getting it back, and we're spending like $60 for basically a mailbox that goes to a lawyer, to where if we get sued or once Gary gets that lawsuit figured out against all those people. Anyway, that wasn't very funny. So if something happens, they have an address to send it to, and then that lawyer will contact me and let me know the bad news. That's not going to happen. We're pretty clean cut over here. But it was a bit of I'm like, man, this is crazy. You know how many audiobooks this is? We got to sell to make up this. But one thing that's happened, and we've had a few problems like online and getting a website. Our website is now a secure website. So if you look at it, it says HTTPS. The S costs a chunk of change. And I don't know, there's always just seems to be more expenses than you would think for a podcast and a website. Anyway, our Patreon team has been amazing with like showing support every month. I like to highlight Emma, James, and Brian for their continued support on Patreon. And it really means a lot that every episode they're pitching in $1 or $2 and showing us support through that. And if you think this episode is worth $1, $2 or $3, whatever, go to Patreon, and there's a link in the show notes there, and you could sign up and help support us in that way. And it's not going to help Gary and Joe specifically, but we all do have full-time jobs. This just imagine like if we actually made. It's not going to happen, but if we made enough money to where this was our full-time jobs, what we would do differently with this podcast. It would be, imagine if we all worked on this like 4 hours a day. Like it would be crazy the amount of stuff we would be able to cover and talk about and do. Not going to happen, but a degree of that. So if we get more ability, money basically enables you to do things. And
well, Byron, you're talking about how great it was that. You got that $400 back.
Not yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, but Joe and I were sad. In all reality, that was not. Joe and I set up a fishing attempt, and we were taking that
Gary.
money so that we were each going to get $200 for the year. Now Joe and I don't have anything.
Oh, I want to say, thank you to the Patreon supporters. If you do sign up on Patreon as a token of support, I mail you out our brand new 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch. We still have a few of the throwbacks. So you get kind of a double patch situation going on. Also, mail you out a BjjBrick sticker. And if you are on Facebook and want to be invited to the private group, now the private group, everybody, I want you all to go to the Facebook page, BjjBrick, and like that and follow along and continue the conversation there. But the private group is what it says. It is private. We'll have some kind of behind the scenes discussions sometimes and tease Gary a little bit. It's all fun.
A little bit.
That seems to be the main focus. But that's all for Patreon supporters. So if you do sign up on Patreon, send me an email, bjjbrick@gmail.com. Let me know your Facebook page, and I'll get you added to the private group and get you having fun right there. That being said, any sort of thing contact-wise, send us some messages on Facebook is a good way to do it, or the email, bjjbrick@gmail.com. We'll be happy to get with you or chat with you and see what's going on. We like hearing from you guys. It means a lot. If you want to train with us, Gary and I are located in Wichita, Kansas. We've split the city in half. Gary gets the west side, I get the east side. But I also train on the west side. I train on the west side, so that doesn't really help. This town is big enough for the two of us, but we can't live real close together. Joe, where can they find you training and rolling?
Yeah, you can find me south of Houston, about 50 minutes down the road in Lake Jackson, Texas. And sometimes over in the New Orleans area. So hit me up and let's get a roll.
Hey, I was going to do this during your story, but it was just so interesting. I got distracted. Can you name 10 different ways to cook shrimp? I'll give you 30 seconds, Joe. Ready? Go.
There's boiled shrimp. There's shrimp etouffee. There's barbecued shrimp. There's sauteed shrimp. There's shrimp scampi, shrimp gumbo. I don't know how many I listed off. But there's a few of them down here.
Well done. Couldn't have done it better myself. Gotta appreciate those shrimp boat guys. That's hard work.
Yep.
Anyway, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Train hard, train smart, get better, guys. We'll see you on the mats.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.